যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Today we have a very significant issue to discuss. It's kind of a hot topic in social justice circles, and at least one significant, I think, retired IAS or a guy who helps out with IAS mock examinations and interviews and stuff. He has also come out saying this, that AI, ChatGPT, any GPT, LLMs are biased towards upper castes. And we have found a paper that's just come out just this month. This is the most latest fresh paper we have ever discussed from our channel. That's the paper we will discuss today. It's a kind of a short paper, 17 pages, but we will discuss the gist first and the core findings of the paper and what are the other angles that this paper ends up coming out with. Okay, that's what we have repeatedly seen, that it happens with good quality research, right? Yeah, the findings are just findings. How you interpret them, how you see those findings, they are up to you. They should be up to you. Unless it's very bad scholarship, then it can be interpreted in only one way. If a paper is like that, then you will know it's bad scholarship. Neon, how exactly? The argument is that existing all the database that help train GPTs, since they inherently have an upper caste bias, therefore the AIs are also upper caste bias. And I have seen some videos regarding it, discussing these things, and I have seen a fundamental flaw in their arguments, their premise itself. On the one hand, they are saying that the data itself is flawed, therefore it has trained AI in a flawed way. Then they show that they have asked ChatGPT themselves that, do you have a bias towards upper castes in your findings? GPT says yes, because that's what existing social science papers tell GPT. On the other hand, they also say that since society has these biases, therefore ChatGPT will obviously show them. But ChatGPT does not pick up data from society. ChatGPT picks up data from scholarship, newspaper articles, and they do not have an upper caste bias at all. That I'm unaware of this. In what aspect is AI biased towards UC? This is how I just described. Now the problem is that that's a different kind of that's kind of a different topic, but the topic today we are going to discuss is slightly different. Here the paper argues that why access to AI itself, since it's allegedly is more accessible by upper castes, therefore AI will keep on increasing the gap of cultural capital between lower castes and upper castes. Okay. Now, let me tell you the problems with this paper, but we will go through the paper in detail as well with a fine-tooth comb, as we always do. The problem is, see, AI did not create the inequality, right? The inequality was already there. If at all, complete equality is even a goal, which is not possible, but from the perspective of state law, statecraft, from that perspective, obviously it should be equality of opportunity, not outcome. But when people say there isn't inequality, they mean, usually more than often, they mean equality of outcomes and rather the lack of it. The inequality was always there. The solution is not more reservations, it's more competence, more skills, more economic growth, more access to productive occupations, right? Every time India discusses economic inequality, somebody eventually blames caste. Now, a new paper argues that upper caste graduates are more exposed to AI than SC and ST graduates. But here's the question nobody's asking. I mean, the commies aren't asking. If a graduate ends up carrying bricks at a construction site, is that the fault of AI? Is that the problem of caste? Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, yes, the reality has been created by history. There are a lot of convolutions in concluding that claim as well. You all know that if you all are a long time follower of this channel. Or is the problem that India's education system produced a degree without producing employable skills? Yeah, when will we discuss that? Now, the core findings of the paper is what we can interpret in our own way to begin with. Okay, the paper mainly argues that AI will worsen caste inequality. But the paper accidentally reveals a crisis of human capital, credential inflation, degree inflation, that everybody is a PhD these days, seemingly. And the paper accidentally reveals an occupational sorting that reservation politics has failed to solve. That occupational sorting is being done by the market. And because of their useless degrees, that the reservation politics could not solve. Right? The biggest story is graduate unemployment. And AI exposure only tracks economic productivity. And the market is rewarding skills, not degrees. Then blame the degrees. Or you can blame the market. Obviously, nobody's listening. And reservation compresses gaps inside the government, inside government employment, right? Not outside. Social capital matters, cultural capital matters. And you can't have those things out of the blue just because of reservations. And the future belongs to AI complementary skills. The paper also unknowingly, sort of as an, I think, probably because of an unintended consequence, unintended consequence, actually destroys that notion of education alone solves everything narrative, right? Because with education, SCSTs are still lacking in AI access. So the paper claims AI will widen caste inequality. What we see is something more fundamental, that India's education system is producing degrees faster than it is producing valuable skills and jobs, obviously. And AI is rewarding competence far more than it's rewarding credentials. It does reward credentials because if you write an article in a small journal or Organizer or Swastika, it's not going to get picked up by the LLMs as much as it would have if you published in Brill or Sage, etc. Right? Shashi is saying reservation is for equitable representation and should be limited to politics. People mistake it for a poverty alleviation program. Shashi, actually they don't. They actually believe it's because of historical injustices that people deserve caste-based reservations, which is why they are against EWS and stuff. Neon is saying there was a paper I read which discussed JEE versus Gaokao, China top exam. It was riveting to see how different the education systems function in that country. Yes, I'm more interested in graduate unemployment part. Yes. How does the AI know that the user is of which caste? I don't understand through what perspective these questions are. No, the user is always not judged by the AI. Of course, by the name and all, it has in fact judged, which is what started this controversy. But here the accusation is that AI simply is giving you answers that are heavily biased towards Savarnas because it's coming up with those conclusions based on all the allegedly articles and papers in the world which are biased towards Savarnas, which there aren't. Where is it getting that pro-Savarna data? There isn't any. That is the problem. Now, before we get into the paper, let me give you some more gists from the paper because a lot of people don't stay on for the entire live stream, obviously. But you see, let's talk about mainly graduate unemployment. The paper finds out, okay, that 24.6% of SC scheduled class graduates and 32% of scheduled tribe graduates, they work in farms or elementary occupations, which means these are degree holders doing jobs that often do not require degrees. Then India doesn't have a caste problem here, right? India has a graduate employment problem. then why are we producing so many degrees? Why are degrees failing to produce market value? Why are taxpayers funding this system? And the paper repeatedly shows that AI exposed occupations are occupations that are exposed to AI are software, finance, management, professional services. And these occupations earn substantially more. The author calls this privilege, but perhaps AI exposure is not privilege. Perhaps AI exposure is a proxy for productivity, right? AI is augmenting people who process information, make decisions, solve problems, manage complexity. That is exactly what a modern economy rewards, doesn't it? The market is rewarding skills, not degrees. AI, and another finding of the paper is that AI exposed occupations enjoy roughly an 18 to 20% wage premium, which means the labor market increasingly is valuing software capability, analytical work, managerial ability, information processing, and not merely processing a certificate. Now, this supports the broader, I guess, almost free market, pro free market argument that human capital matters more than credential accumulation, which people are stuck with, which lower castes are being incentivized to be stuck with, which lower castes are being told to be stuck with. Just bother about your credentials, your degree that you managed because of your caste certificate. Be happy with that. Neon is saying you need to have some sort of luxury in life to sit back and contemplate on things like historical injustices and caste theory. Most people in SC/ST category don't have that. The ones who have had 4 generations of reservations and have IASs in their families and they are still Dalits, they have the Dalit feminists in LA. They do have the time for that. Aritrojit is asking, who is the author? The name of the author is Kaibalyapati Mishra. He's an Odia person. He's an health economist. Has great biodata actually. Now, reservation, remember, compresses only gaps inside the government employment situation, not outside. So one of the most politically explosive findings is that caste gap is much smaller inside government employment and much larger in the private sector. The author implies that more intervention may be needed. Okay, some sort of reservation, maybe, perhaps something of that sort. But if decades of reservation succeeded, why do these gaps remain so large in the productive sectors of the economy? Either admit that you are losing to evil upper castes, or admit that it's not worked, or admit both, that yes, it's because of evil castes that your beautiful solution isn't working, therefore try something new now. And therefore we have to shift the debate from quotas to capability building, right? And remember, social capital and cultural capital always matters. This is where Max Weber, Pierre Bourdieu become useful. This paper shows upper caste graduates are overrepresented in software, finance, managerial occupations, even after excluding manual jobs. This paper treats this largely as caste sorting. But does this take into account family education, professional networks, urban upbringing, English proficiency, inherited cultural capital, which cannot be substituted by caste-based reservations? If caste is the cause, is caste the cost? Is caste the cause for this? Is casteism the cause for this? Or is caste merely correlated with forms of social capital and cultural capital? The future obviously belongs to AI complementary skills. Therefore, the answer is not stopping AI. The answer is increasing access to the skills and occupations that benefit from AI. Will you be able to do that with reservations? Meaning, we need better education, better skills, more entrepreneurship, more private sector growth, so that there is access, easy access, universal access, and less obsession with identity politics. And mainly, the paper claims that AI will widen caste inequality, but what I see is something more fundamental, which is India's education system is producing degrees faster than it is producing valuable skills. And AI is rewarding competence far more than credentials. There's nothing more to this. Let's start the paper now. What is the title of the paper? Yeah, I will put up the paper on the screen now. We will discuss the whole paper now. The privilege of exposure, caste and generative AI in India's graduate labor market. This is from 12th June 2026. What? The paper just came out today. Holy shit. I did not notice this. I just skimmed through the entire paper and I saw a June date. I did not know the paper just came out today. This is the, as you say, tatka in Bengali, right? Neon is saying that basically the level of the Gakao in China is indeed objectively higher than JEE. However, the JEE actually has worse odds since the Indian system can only reward the topmost performers while anyone below is stranded. Shashi is saying, I'm from a tribal family. Poor people, including tribals, don't think about historical injustices. They think reservation gives me jobs and other facilities. Most tribals I spoke to have no knowledge of historical injustices. Tribals probably no, but SCs definitely are all the time talking about Sosit, Vanchit, Pidit, right? They are using those terms, right? If they are Sosit and Vanchit, they obviously are arguing that somebody, some group, some people, some groups of people have been doing that Sosan and Vanchana, because of which they are at this point Sosit and Vanchit. Okay, let's start the paper. Who is exposed to generative AI in a developing country labor market? We map 3 occupational AI exposure indices to India's redesigned periodic labor force survey of 2025 and document a steep caste gradient among 83,000 employed graduates. Graduates from SC and ST are 0.24 to 0.37 standard deviations less exposed than upper caste graduates within the same district. 2 channels drive the gap. 1 in 4 scheduled caste and 1 in 3 scheduled tribe graduates work in farm or elementary occupations untouched by AI. Why the fuck? And those in white-collar work are underrepresented in managerial, software, and finance occupations. Because exposure commands a wage premium of up to 20%. Generative AI stands to widen, not narrow, India's caste earnings gap. A growing literature measures which workers are exposed to artificial intelligence by scoring the task content of occupations against AI capabilities. Its consistent finding is that exposure rises with education and is higher for women and for white-collar workers. Why is it higher for women all of a sudden? All latest data, right? That's why we get such interesting findings. What this literature has not examined is how exposure is distributed across social groups within a developing country, where occupational sortings reflects not only skill but historical hierarchies of access. India is a natural case. Caste remains a first-order determinant of occupational attainment and wages, even among the highly educated. And the sectors where generative AI adoption is most plausible, that is IT, finance, and business services, are precisely those where upper caste graduates are concentrated. This paper provides to our knowledge the first caste disaggregated estimates of occupational exposure to AI. We construct a crosswalk linking 3 independently built exposure indices to India's National Classification of Occupations of 2015 and merge it with the first wave of the redesigned Periodic Labor Force Survey of 2025, covering roughly 83,000 employed graduates. 3 results emerge. First, AI exposure among graduates rises monotonically with caste advantage relative to upper caste or the others who are graduates in the same district. Scheduled caste graduates are 0.24 to 0.27 standard deviations less exposed, and scheduled tribe graduates are 0.31 to 0.37 standard deviations less exposed, with the gap nearly identical across all 3 indices. Second, the finding is that the gap decomposes into 2 channels, and the gap between SC and ST, SC/ST versus general castes. An occupational relegation margin, 24.6% of scheduled caste and 32% of scheduled tribe graduates work in farm or elementary occupations with essentially zero AI exposure against 12.1% of others. And sorting within the white-collar work, where upper caste graduates are overrepresented in managerial, software, and finance occupations. Third, exposure of the type associated with high skill abilities carries a wage premium of roughly 20 log points per standard deviation, while the most automatable clerical exposure does not. Therefore, the relationship between automation type exposure and earnings is an inverted U. Together, these results invert the usual framing of AI exposure as displacement risk. In India's graduate labor market, exposure is a marker of privilege. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribe graduates are insulated from generative AI for the worst possible reason, which is the labor market has already excluded them from occupations the technology will augment because they were busy with their caste certificate based jobs. They did not get into this train, this party. They are late to this party and now are suffering. And they were told to do these things by their well-wishers, people with soft bigotry of low expectations. A construction laborer with a degree cannot be displaced by a language model. He has been displaced by something older. If, as the wage results suggest, the gains from generative AI accrue to workers in exposed, augmentable occupations, the technology will compound rather than offset the caste earnings gap among graduates. The paper relates to three literatures. It extends the cross-country exposure work of Pizzinelli et al. And Gimerick et al. From 2023 and 2025 to within-country social stratification. It connects to evidence on AI skill demand in India, where vacancy data show AI demand concentrated in high-wage urban services. And it adds a technological dimension to the literature on caste gaps in graduate labor markets and the devaluation of credentials under mass higher education expansion. Data and measurement. Labor force data. We use the first visit person level file of the redesigned PLFS covering calendar year 2025. The redesigned survey moved to a monthly schedule with a rotational panel. The first visit file contains each sampled household once. Our sample is all persons aged 15 to 65 who are employed by usual principal activity status. Graduates are persons whose general education level is graduate or postgraduate and above. This yields 4,49,041 employed persons, of whom 82,830 are graduates. Social group is reported at the household level in 4 categories: scheduled tribe, scheduled caste, other backward classes, and others. The last serving as the reference category and consisting predominantly of upper caste households, the others group. Okay, all statistics use survey weights. Table 1 defines all variables and table 2 reports summary statistics. We will take these at face value, obviously. Exposure measurement. PLFS records occupation at the 3-digit level of NCO 2015, which is constructed to align with ISCO 2008. At 3 digits, the 2 classifications correspond 1-to-1. We attach 3 exposure indices to the 130 occupation groups. The first is the AI Occupational Exposure Index of Felton et al. An ability-based measure built from ONET. The second is the task-based measure from Elondo et al. The share of an occupation's tasks for which a large language model with appropriate tooling can halve the completion time. They're beta human rated. Both are built on US occupational data and reach NCO 2015 through the official Bureau of Labor Statistics SOC ISCO crosswalk, with scores aggregated within ISCO minor groups using US employment weights. The third is the 2025 Generative AI Exposure Index of the International Labour Organization, which is constructed directly on ISCO 2008 task descriptions from Polish task level data, worker surveys, and expert assessment, and therefore requires no US crosswalk. We aggregate its 4-digit scores to 3 digits by unweighted means and additionally use its categorical exposure gradients. All scores are standardized across the 130 occupation groups. The obvious concern with transferring exposure scores across countries is that the same occupation code may bundle different tasks in India than in the United States. 2 features of our design address this. The ILO index does not rely on US task data, and the 3 indices agree closely. Spearman rank correlations across the 130 NCO groups are 0.92 between the 2 US-based measures and 0.881 to a 0.83 between each of them and the ILO index. Almost exactly the range reported when the same indices are compared on European data. Our results are nearly identical across all 3. The merge matches 100% of weighted employment. Yes, I can show the tables once. Table 1 you can't see obviously because it's inverted. You can take screenshots or check out the paper yourself. Here is the table 2. OBC 0.44 to 0.497. What about the others? Farm elementary occupation. Minimum, maximum, mean SD. I heard Shajal Ghosh is the mayor of Kolkata. Okay, I need a break. Throughout, exposure measures potential interaction between an occupation's tasks and current AI capabilities, not AI adoption. We interpret the results as the incidence of generative AI under counterfactual adoption in the standard tradition of this literature. The results. The caste gradient in exposure. Panel A of table 3. Panel A of table 3. We still don't have table 3, right? Where is table 3? This is table 3. Yeah, table 3, panel A. Yes, C, ST, OBC, others. Others are the upper castes or general castes. High exposure share of general castes is 0.189, while SCs is 0.136, OBC 0.158, ST 0.125. ST generative AI score according to ILO 2025 is minus 0.035, 0.074 for SCs, OBC is 0.264, for general castes 0.496. So panel A of table 3 reports a survey weighted mean exposure of employed graduates by social group. Exposure rises monotonically with caste advantage on every index. Upper caste graduates sit about half a standard deviation above the occupational level mean, which is 0.5 to 0.57 depending on the index. Scheduled caste graduates sit essentially at the mean, which is 0.07 to 0.08, and scheduled tribe graduates are at or below it. The categorical measure tells the same story. 18.9% of the occupational content of upper caste graduate employment falls in the ILO's two highest exposure gradients against 12.5 to 13.6% for ST and SC graduates. Table 4 shows that the gradient is not an artifact of geography or demographic composition. Let's check out table 4. This is table 4. By social group SC, ST, OBC, district, FE controls observations. Dependent variables are standardized occupational AI exposure scores. Omitted categories are others. Controls are the quadratic in age, sex, sector. Survey weighted least squares. Standard errors in parentheses clustered by NCO 2015 3-digit occupation. Table 4 shows that the gradient is not an artifact of geography or demographic composition. Within districts, conditional on a quadratic in age, sex, and sector, scheduled caste graduates are 0.24 to 0.27 standard deviations less exposed than upper caste graduates. Scheduled tribe graduates are 0.31 to 0.37 standard deviations less exposed, and OBC graduates about 0.14 standard deviations less exposed. The coefficients are remarkably stable across the three indices, including the ILO index built without any US task data, and all are significant at the 1% level with standard errors clustered at the level at which exposure is assigned. Now, mechanisms for relegation and sorting of these castes. Barbarika is asking, but communities that can't afford the risk being left behind is not unique to India. Are they implying caste is global? They are unknowingly implying it, but they're talking about just castes of India and NRIs who come under caste conversations, caste discourses. This is much ado about nothing. Two channels generate the gradient. The first is occupational relegation. Panel C of table 3 shows that 24.6% of employed scheduled caste graduates and 32% of scheduled tribe graduates work in farm or elementary occupations as cultivators, agricultural laborers, or construction laborers, against 19.9% of OBC and 12.1% of upper caste graduates. So why? Because their degrees are meaningless, worthless. These occupations have essentially zero AI exposure under every index. Therefore, their jobs can't be taken by AI, by the way. The relegation margin is itself a measure of credential devaluation, because everyone has a credential these days. A substantial minority of disadvantaged group degree holders work in occupations that require no degree at all because they got degrees that are not worth the piece of paper they are printed on. Aman Singh, I think you are wrong. Aman Singh is saying, well, the legal or constitutional rationale behind reservation has always been economics and not past discrimination alone. I won't be surprised if BJP introduces reservations in private sector. Your second claim is obviously very correct. I won't be surprised either. But the legal or constitutional rationale has never been economics, which is why they have forever disagreed with the creamy layer argument, or the claim from right wingers that, oh, you had a reservation for 2 generations, now give it up because you are wealthy enough. That argument has never worked in courts. That has never been argument by anybody in the history of post-independence India by any even scholar, because it has nothing to do with economics. The second channel is sorting within white collar work. Panel B repeats panel A excluding farm and elementary occupations. The gap narrows by roughly 40% but does not close. Among white collar graduates, upper caste workers remain 0.26 to 0.3 standard deviations more exposed than scheduled caste workers. The occupational composition behind this residual is stark. Among upper caste graduates, 5.3% are software developers, 3.4% finance professionals, and 9.4% hold managerial occupations, including 5.1% recorded as managing directors and chief executives. Among scheduled caste graduates, the corresponding software and finance shares are 2.1 and 1.9%, and no managerial occupation appears among their 12 largest occupation groups. Teaching, by contrast, absorbs a similar share of both groups, about 11%. So public sector teaching employment is not what differentiates them. Because public sector teaching is horseshit, because they are getting educated by teachers who are not qualified themselves because of caste-based reservations. Great circular self-eating circle to be part of. A chakra view, if you will. So public sector teaching employment is not what differentiates them, lol. Exclusion from exposed private white-collar occupation is. The sorting at the occupation level is therefore that the SC/ST share of graduate employment declines steadily with exposure from nearly half in construction labor to under a tenth in software development. This is a table if any stats bro wants to check it out. A lot of work has gone into the paper, but the framing of their brain is problematic. Why exposure matters, exposure to AI, the wage premium. Table 5 asks whether exposure is an asset or a liability by estimating earnings regressions for regular salaried graduates, because it might also be a liability, because if you are exposed to AI related jobs, then your job is more vulnerable to being lost because of AI. If you do not require AI to do your job, then your job cannot be replaced by AI. So it is a double-edged sword. Be careful what you ask for. A 1 standard deviation increase in ability-based exposure, or AIOE, is associated with 20 log points higher monthly earnings. The task-based measure of Elondu et al. Gives 18.4 log points. The ILO automation score, by contrast, carries no linear premium, and column 4 shows why. Which is, its relationship with earnings is an inverted U, rising over most of the distribution and turning down at the top of the automation scale, where the most automatable clerical occupations sit. This is the familiar routine cognitive pattern, which is occupations exposed through high skill abilities are well paid, while occupations exposed through routine automatable tasks are not. The wage structure gives the caste gradient its economic content. The exposure that SC and ST graduates lack is precisely the kind that pays, because they are busy with bullshit. Interacting exposure with, so you see again the problem of sort of communism, Abrahamic thinking. Create the problem, sell the solution. It's the people who have this kind of thinking who have told the lower castes to be bothered with bullshit degrees based on their caste certificates. And now they are saying, oh, you see, they seem to be bothered about bullshit degrees that are not that high paying. I think it's the fault of Savarnas. Yeah, Savarna commies, no doubt, but not the Savarnas, the kind of Savarnas they think. Interacting exposure with social group yields negative coefficients for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, suggesting evidence that disadvantaged group graduates also capture less of the premium salaries with exposed occupations, though we do not lean on these marginal estimates. The robust facts are the sorting results, which is disadvantaged group graduates are systematically absent from the occupations where generative AI meets high wages. Decomposing the gap. Table 6 traces the exposure gap through a sequence of nested specifications. The raw gap between scheduled caste and upper caste graduates is 0.42 standard deviations, and the scheduled tribe gap is 0.53 standard deviations. Demographic composition and location absorb a little under half of each, adding an indicator for farm or elementary employment. Aritrojit is saying, I see a lot of p-values, but which standard are they adhering to? The ones mentioned in the beginning, the indices. They are saying some degrees are useful. Clearly, they haven't worked a day in their life. No, this guy is a pretty well credentialed, even in the era of credential inflation. This guy is a health economist. Demographic composition and location absorb a little under half of each, adding an indicator for farm or elementary employment shows the channels differ by group. Relegation accounts for over half of the remaining ST gap, which falls from 0.32 to which falls from 0.32 to 0.15, but only a sixth of the scheduled caste gap. Column 4 replaces the indicator with NCO division, one digit fixed effects, comparing graduates with broad occupation groups. Even there, scheduled caste graduates are 0.13 and scheduled tribe graduates scheduled caste graduates are 0.13 and scheduled tribe graduates 0.16 standard deviations less exposed. Roughly half of the conditional gap operates within occupational divisions themselves, okay, within one occupation, between, say, teaching and software development inside the professional division, rather than between manual and white collar work. We stress that columns 3 and 4 are an accounting decomposition, not a causal design. Occupation is the channel through which exposure is determined. So these columns apportion the gap across the margins rather than identify the effect of caste net of occupation. Check out this table if anybody is interested. Decomposing the exposure gap, ILO generative AI score. SC, ST, OBC. Heterogeneity, gender, cohorts, and the public sector. Is this whole paper just well researched and put together larp? No, that can be answered only by people who are as educated as him on these in these subjects. But based on this guy's credentials, it seems pretty legit. He's not from a hoax institution with a hoax degree. I'll tell you what he is a part of. What's his name? Kaibalyapati Misro. So the guy is a senior research fellow as a health economist at the Center for Excellence on Public Health and Nutrition, COEPHN, at the National Institute of NIT Rourkela, Odisha, guys. Bro. You are not going to counter an NIT Rourkela guy with LARPing, nor is he going to LARP himself. He's not a random social science guy from a random government college. He will require work to counter properly. So I'm not countering him on his data or his methodology, obviously. I'm countering him on his core findings. So he's saying in his website that I was a PhD student at the Center for Economic Studies and Policy, Institute for Social and Economic Change, Bangalore, under the guidance of Professor Krishna Raj. I am currently engaged in my doctoral research titled as Asymmetric Information in Higher Education in India, a study of screening, signaling, and inequality in access. So this guy is completely obsessed about caste. Alongside my core research, I am actively interested in developmental economics. Oh, no wonder. This involves studying the correlation between income inequality and development and analyzing the implications of persistent inequality. I am also intrigued by explorations in labor economics, especially relating to sustainable employment solutions and health economics and government management of health-related emergencies like COVID-19. I am a staunch believer in a mix of theory and empirics. Theory and empirics in finding answers to important questions in the economic sciences. Thus, I continue to train myself with empirical tools while growing my base in theory. Filter लाट ऐसे नहीं होता है. So the caste gradient is present within both sexes, somewhat larger among men. The intersection with gender now, okay? Somewhat larger among men. So the scheduled caste gap is minus 0.26 against minus 0.17 among women. And the caste gender interactions in the pooled specification are positive but individually insignificant. Caste and gender disadvantage do not compound. The female main effect is itself noteworthy. Among upper caste graduates, women are 0.21 standard deviations less exposed than men. What a surprise, guys. What a surprise. The opposite of the cross-country pattern in which women's concentration is in women's concentration in clerical work makes them more exposed. Among Indian graduates, oh, yeah, obviously. The opposite of the cross-country pattern in which women's concentration is in clerical work makes them more exposed to AI. Shashi saying, my friend from IMC, so I am Calcutta, right? I am Calcutta, and later that ISB Hyderabad told me I'll do great in development economics. He's a finance guy though. Did he tell you that you will do great in developmental economics, or that he will do great in development economics? Obviously, anybody will do great in development economics because that's the biggest pool for hiring for the Indian government. Our Indian government is obsessed with development economics. Alapon Pariya's question. Where is the question? Why is delimitation not being coupled with census? I'm not going to discuss that in the middle of this paper, obviously. Among Indian graduates, the dominant female occupations are teaching and health, which, oh, what a wonder. Teaching and health. Jobs that require femininity. What a scandal, guys. Which every index among Indian graduates, the dominant female occupations are teaching and health, which every index scores as unexposed. So the gender sorting that protects women from automation also excludes them from augmentable work. Although, why can't you use AI in teaching? No, NIT Rourkela isn't a random call. No, not that. Okay, then what else did you ask upon? Can't see any other of your questions. No. Who can be mayor of Kolkata? Oh, Sajal Ghosh, I've heard. Nobody else. I would prefer Taposh Roy as an MLA, as the minister, as well as the mayor. Here is table 7 if anybody wants to see exposure gaps by caste and gender. SC, ST, OBC, female, SC female, ST female, OBC female. Table 8 splits the sample by age. The SC gap is largest among labor market entrants aged 15 to 30, which is 0.28 minus 0.28, and declines monotonically across cohorts minus 0.22 prime, minus 0.19 senior, prime age and senior age. The OBC gap falls from 0.18 to minus 0.18 to minus 0.06. The exposure divide is therefore not a legacy of older cohorts working its way out of the labor force. It is widest precisely where generative AI is arriving among graduates entering employment now. Only the scheduled tribe gap is flat across, but this paper was published just today. So you know, as an audience at least, what is the latest, what are the sets of latest arguments that they are coming up with, so you'll be updated with your net practice at least. Barika is saying, I mean, if you're going to use it as credential, it should be at least in the top 5 in the category. No, then what about the top 10? If at all, NIT Rourkela is in top 10. User is saying, question on a different topic. Me and my friends were discussing which chief minister contributed most to the development of West Bengal. My answer was BC Roy, and according to my friends, Jyoti Basu, no, Jyoti Basu did not do anything. Jyoti Basu had plans after 90s, after 1993, because of the McKinsey report and WBIDC plans with ICICI Bank, but he did not execute anything at all. Yes, BC Roy and Jyoti Basu. Is the counter to distributism that rich will flee had a debate with Hindu? Wait, I could not understand your question. You obviously rewrite it without the typos. Neon is saying an ST transgender woman who has converted to Christianity would be the peak combination of woke combination. No, if it was an ST transgender handicapped Muslim, because Muslims are more marginalized than Christians in India according to commies, therefore. তিনটে করে পি ভ্যালুজে এর স্ট্যান্ডার্ড নিয়েছে 0.1 0.05 and 0.1 এটা একটু গোবর লাগছে ক্যান সামওয়ান ক্লারিফাই বিকজ অফ দ্য ক্লারিফিকেশনস at the beginning, because he was picking up data from different countries and then having controls for that as well. So you'll have to go back to the paper a little, or go back to the beginning of the live stream. Not the beginning, I mean half an hour back at least. What's your answer on this question? Which chief minister contributed most to the development of West Bengal? Most BC Roy, but I would respect Buddhadev's development more because he did it under much more dire circumstances, and the state was way more destroyed by the time Buddhadev took over than BC Roy. BC Roy was working with more. What will be the counter to distribute is okay, complete the question. So table 8 splits the sample by age. The scheduled caste gap is largest among labor market entrants. Oh, this we discussed, yeah. So only the OBC gap falls from minus 0.18 to minus 0.06. The exposure divide is therefore not a legacy of older cohorts working its way out of the labor force. It is widest precisely where generative AI is arriving among graduates entering employment now. Only the scheduled tribe gap is flat across cohorts, consistent with relegation is dominant channel, being persistent across generations. Oh, what a surprise after incentivized ghettoization, bro. You have 4 wives, it's a problem. It's not a problem. Muslims have 4 wives, it's a problem. You do animal cruelty with cockfighting, it's not a problem because it's your culture. Anybody else does animal cruelty, it's a huge problem. Just like ghettoization is allowed in different other ways as well. You do kurbani, allowed. Pashu bali, not allowed. A situation where a goat dies a painful death, slow death, goats and cows, that's allowed. That's kurbani. Pashu bali, you die in one stroke, more often than not. Every now and then some retard hits the goat a little too soft, and the goat dies slowly, painfully to death, bleeding with its head hanging like nearly headless Nick. And then the family does more puja part, kills 5-6 goats more, and asks for forgiveness from the mother. And that's not allowed. That's Pashubali. Table 9 splits employment by enterprise type. Inside the public sector, the caste gaps compress sharply. SC 0.14, ST minus 0.14. Both minus 0.14. Outside it, they widen. SC becomes minus 0.27, ST becomes minus 0.44. The contrast is starkest for scheduled tribe graduates, whose private sector gap is more than 3 times the public sector gap. This is what one would expect if reservation compresses occupational sorting within government employment, while private hiring reproduces it. Look at this. This is what one would expect if reservation compresses occupational sorting within government employment, while private hiring reproduces those gaps. Those occupational sortings are reproduced by the private sector. The implication cuts both ways. The public sector, is where disadvantaged group graduates come closest to occupational parity, but are of course stuck in low-paying jobs. But public sector occupations are concentrated in the unexposed range, so parity is achieved in precisely the segment that generative AI will leave behind. Table 9, if anybody is interested, exposure gaps inside and outside the public sector for SC, ST, OBC. Good data collection, at least. We know some things. The exposure premium across the earnings distribution. Table 10 estimates unconditional quantile regressions of log earnings on AIOE exposure. The premium is positive and significant at every quantile, but follows a hump, which is 13.5 log points at the 10th percentile. Okay, rising to a peak of roughly 32 log points around the 40th percentile before declining to about 14 at the 90th. Exposed occupations most strongly differentiate earnings in the middle of the graduate wage distribution, where clerical and junior professional work sits. Remember one big fallacy with these sorts of research. They are tracking abstract groups of people. They are just tracking groups, not individual people. Not tracking their improvement in salaries after they learn AI or do get exposed to AI, or simply are more enterprising, hardworking, conscientious, disagreeable, etc. Exposed occupations most strongly differentiate earnings in the middle of the graduate wage distribution, where clerical and junior professional work sits. At the top, high earnings are attainable in both exposed software and finance and unexposed medicine, senior management. Unexposed, that is medicine and senior management occupations. The distributional reading reinforces the main result, which is for the typical salaried graduate, holding an AI exposed occupation is associated with substantially higher pay, and it is exactly this middle of the distribution premium from which SC and ST graduates are disproportionately absent. Table 10 here. Aditrajit, how are they measuring the exposure index? Exposure premium across the earnings distribution, RIF regressions table, okay? Check this out. AIOE exposure, observations. Unconditional quantile regressions of log monthly earnings on standardized AIOE exposure. Sample controls, FE and clustering as in table 5. You should write a counter paper to this. Robustness. Table 11 re-estimates the conditional gaps under alternative measurement choices. Unweighted aggregation of exposure scores within ISCO groups. Exclusion of ICT occupations, where the assumption that Indian and US task content, okay, the nature of the tasks in US and in India, task content coincide is, so where the assumption that India and US task content coincide is weakest, and restriction to postgraduates. The SC and ST coefficients move little. The postgraduate column is the only one with notable attenuation, SC minus 0.616 and ST minus 0.25, suggesting the gradient is somewhat flatter at the highest education level, though it remains significant at 1% throughout. You can download this paper yourself for Indrajit. It just came out today. It's available on Google. Conclusion of the paper. In India's graduate labor market, exposure to generative AI is a privilege gradient. Upper caste graduates, it is true, but the way to change it is not what they think. Upper caste graduates dominate the managerial, software, and finance occupations that AI will augment. SCS, obviously. SC and ST graduates are concentrated in unexposed work, a quarter to a third of them in farm and elementary occupations that require no degree, no shit. Their insulation from AI is the footprint of their prior exclusion. Fair enough. Since exposure of the augmentable kind commands another table, guys, quantile log of monthly earnings. Exposure premium, log points per SD on the x-axis, and quantile of log monthly earnings on the y-axis. Since exposure of the augmentable kind commands a substantial wage premium, the distribution of generative AI's gains will follow the distribution of exposure, and the technology should be expected to widen the caste earnings gap among graduates rather than narrow it. Okay, the technology should be expected to widen the caste earnings gap among graduates rather than narrow it. If we go the way we are going, for this table, by the way, it's mentioned that the table figure discussing AI exposure premium across the earnings distribution. Coefficients on standardized AIOE exposure from unconditional quantile regressions of log monthly earnings estimated at every 5th percentile from 10th to the 90th. We discussed this already. The controls are quadratic in age, sector, and sex. District fixed effects, survey weighted. Shaded band is 95% confidence interval. Standard errors clustered by NCO 2015. 3-digit partition. Sample is regular salaried graduates with positive earnings. The next table is robustness of the conditional exposure gap. Check this out, guys, those who are interested. The baseline unweighted aggregate for SCs, STs, OBCs. See the articulation, pure AI generated one. AI does make good documents, by the way. It's good for folks who are lazy to create documentation like me. The policy implication is not to slow adoption, but to widen access to the occupations and skills through which AI's gains flow. Finally, something we agree with, guys. Good. So this is a well-meaning document, person then at least. Demand for AI skills in India is growing rapidly and is concentrated in high-wage urban services. Whether disadvantaged group graduates can enter those occupations will determine whether the technology entrenches or erodes existing hierarchies. What do you think it will do? It will entrench existing hierarchies, obviously. 3 caveats bound the interpretation. Exposure is not adoption. Okay, exposure to AI does not mean adopting AI, and adoption in India outside IT and finance remains limited. Our estimates describe, although not so much, everybody is using AI, it's just not that trackable, I think. Our estimates describe incidents under counterfactual adoption. Task content. Our estimates describe incidents under counterfactual adoption. Task content may differ between Indian and US occupations, though the agreement between US-based and ISCO native indices limits the force of this concern. Artrajit. And 3-digit occupational coding averages over heterogeneous detailed occupations, which attenuates rather than inflates the gradients we report. That's it. Here are the references. Let's check out the citations where they are getting this stuff. D.H. Dorn, the growth of low-skill service jobs and the polarization of the US labor market. American Economic Review. F. Davies Carbonero. J. Ernst, okay, lots of people, et al. The impact of artificial intelligence on labor markets in developing countries. A new method with an illustration for Lao PDR and urban Vietnam. Lao. Copestake, et al. AI and services-led growth evidence from Indian job adverts, STEG working paper. Elondo T et al. Labor market impact potential of LLMs in Science magazine. Felton, M. Raj et al. Occupational industry and geographic exposure to artificial intelligence, a novel dataset and its potential uses. P. Gimerick et al. generative AI and jobs, a refined global index of occupational exposure, ILO working paper 140, International Labour Office, Geneva. S. Madheshwaran et al. Caste discrimination in the Indian urban labor market, evidence from the national sample. Guys, someone with expertise in these fields who can write papers like this with these methodologies, with these data, needs to counter this stuff. And YouTuber cannot counter this stuff. At least it will not be taken seriously. All I can do is raise awareness of this, and somebody will have to take it up. The K. Mishra, the devaluation of degrees. Obviously, we are living through a degree inflation, credential inflation. Caste discrimination in the Indian labor market. Lol. C. Piginelli et al. Labor market exposure to AI, cross-country differences and distributional implications. IMF working paper. So a lot of work has already gone into this. Magically saying AI would expose too many things in India, from communal politics to superstitions to economy also in upcoming time. Yes, Dada, check my comment. Alapon's comment. He was saying this is dharmic economics. I said rich will flee if we distributed ownership. Who was saying? What will be the counter to distributism? He was saying this is dharmic economics. Distribution is dharmic economics. I said the rich will flee if we distributed ownership. See, Indian history does have evidence of distributionship, but it's come and gone every now and then, and it's not been this overt in this way, in this format, in this way of operation, freebies distribution, etc. That has never happened in Indian history. More so, whatever you can term as dharmic economics does not imply that it will work. Yes, it may be dharmic economics. How do we know it will work? Just because it's dharmic economics, it's going to work? More so, your definition of dharmic economics. It's not like an actual economics with a lot of knowledge of economics, as well as dharma, as well as who has read a bunch of texts like Arthashastra, who is saying these things. It's a random guy saying this is a dharmic economic thing. What is the field of mysterious sociologist? He's called mysterious sociologist, so he's a sociologist. Anakshara, dharmic economics, what does it even mean? It means coming up with any socialist policy and terming it with giving it some Sanskrit lexicon. That's called dharmic economics. It's not discrimination, to be honest. It's more that GC have a culture of studies plus high achievement compared to LC guys. Yes, because the lower castes are being told that you don't have to study hard enough. You'll get a certificate and get into a government job, and then the jobs are worthless, and then they are left out of the job market. They work in farms with degrees, proper degrees, which is the core finding of this paper. Yes, Neon is saying dharmic Sangh economics is Bamutram. Aritrojit is saying, I think by AI they mean primarily LLM generative AI. I agree with the exposure is. I agree with the fact that claim that exposure is not adoption argument. I agree with the exposure is not adoption argument, but you can build AI tailored to specific professions, at least theoretically. You can. It's not done yet, so they are kind of fair. It's fair for them to claim these things now, at least on this particular metric. Distributionism. It's not distributism, by the way, Alapon. It's called distributionism. Distributionism is dividing ownership of wealth generating assets. Yeah. And that's not happening no matter what economics it is. It's like Bengaluru Tech Bros adding AI with B2B SaaS. Okay. To conclude, guys, let's go over the conclusion that we discussed in the live stream in the beginning. Okay. The core findings and my interpretation of this paper. Okay. That will be more fruitful. Let's go through that. Once again, thank God I wrote these things down. So guys, AI did not create the inequality. The inequality was already there. And the solution is not more reservations. It is more competence, more skills, more economic growth, and more access to productive occupations. India keeps on discussing economic inequality. Somebody ends up blaming caste. This paper says that upper caste graduates are more exposed to AI than scheduled caste and scheduled tribe graduates. But if a graduate ends up carrying bricks at a construction site, is that the problem of AI? Is that the problem of caste? Is a company saying, no, you are lower caste, so go lay bricks, don't work in my company? Or is the problem that India's education system has produced a degree without producing employable skills? What is the problem? And the paper wants to argue that AI will worsen caste inequality, but the paper unintentionally ends up arguing that it ends up showing that what we are dealing with is a crisis of human capital, credential inflation, and occupational sorting, which reservation politics has failed to solve. So no reservations anymore. Let's start with primary education. Yes, about time. Din Bhakta is saying, is there any study on correlation between income-based caste strata and different levels of income? Yes, there is. It kind of was discussed here as well. And the citations it has, there has been lots of work on this. Okay, then. Thanks a lot for joining the live stream, guys. And if you want to contribute to my legal troubles, here is how you can contribute. My next hearing is in August. I am still modifying the FIR. And hopefully this time I have filed an RG petition, because I had to, because even until the elections, the police station did their own thing. And after I modified the FIR, spending lakhs of rupees and waiting for 7-8 months, nothing was modified except the fact that they beat up someone who already has, who is already half injured because of his legs, who is already kind of handicapped because of his leg. That's all they added. They didn't add all the names we gathered and all the sections we added. Now we have filed an RG petition. The next hearing is in August, and it will go on. And hopefully after August, all of them will be arrested. So I do consider donating to my cause. Have you seen the latest podcast of Raj Shamani with Abhijit Banerjee? Oh, holy shit. We will have to then. Fuck. This will be fun. Anakshara is saying people in India should start taking pride in their pair of marbles instead of being sorry for carrying them. Yeah. And let's see if there are some more cool comments and stuff. No, my FIR is not against Didi or Bhaipo. It's against their men and women here, and right-hand men of people who are absconding. Okay then. Thanks for joining, guys. Bye-bye. Good night.
কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো। কালো তোকে কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো। কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো। বিপদে মা তোকে ডাকে সবাই, আমি যেন তোকে রাখি ভালো। বিপদে তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো বিপদে মা তোকে ডাকে সবাই, আমি যেন তোকে রাখি ভালো।